What's up? And I got literally no plans for this video. We're here in the garage. I'm sitting here drinking some coffee as pre-workout before I hit arms. So that's where we're at. But I've been on a bit of a hiatus because I got completely sent down a different path by God. Reading Kierkegaard. Holy smokes! I've had a collection of Kierkegaard not fragments, but because he wrote a book called Fragments. He calls it Fragments. It's a 600-page book of fragments. Okay, I love Kierkegaard. Holy smokes. Kierkegaard, what a guy. What an individual. All right, so many things have clicked with me because of this guy. So many things. Wow. He's set me on a journey, man, of faith, finding faith. And completely in a way that I would not have understood. I didn't understand. I grew up in a Christian home, going to church, all that, never understood what that was, faith. And I'm starting to understand it. Not in a rational way. Not in a way, because I always assumed that it would be one thing where just like, oh, I get it now. Like I understand God now. In the same way where you can read philosophy and understand a philosophical concept, and all of a sudden it just is like, oh, I get it. Like, I understand Plato's theory of the forms. I understand, you know what you understand what I'm saying. I understand it in a way that doesn't make sense. Anyways, that's a rabbit hole. Actually, this video is a rabbit hole. Who cares? Let's keep going. So Kierkegaard, man. Soren. What an interesting individual. When he died, he had engraved on his tombstone that individual. And when he's talking about the Knight of Faith, it's so funny because when I read about the Knight of Faith, I was just picturing Elisha Long and having retarded gumption, having retarded faith. It was like, man, it's wild. This probably only makes sense to me. Yeah, in fact, I'm sure it probably only makes sense to me. But anyways, Kierkegaard, his dad was jacked up. His dad, heavily religious family. His father was married to some lady, and she died. But within 4 months, he was remarried to his previous maid, which Soren was conceived outside of wedlock. From this maid. So his dad lives with this eternal guilt to such an extent where this definitely jacked him up and jacked up Soren and his sister. I believe he had a sister. Completely messed him up and her because it was almost like his dad assumed that there was now like a family curse. And so he said that he would die at the age of like 33 or something like that, or age of like 32, whenever Jesus died. He's like, there's now a family curse because of my sin, and now you're cursed too. So Soren, man, he jacked up in the head. That guy messed up. Absolutely jacked up. And you can tell by reading some of the stuff he says, but he also, but that being said, he's opened up a completely new avenue in my life, which I gotta say, I'm very thankful for. But anyways, so Kierkegaard, he's messed up in the head. Yeah, one thing I've heard as well, because his dad was a really smart dude, really smart guy, and he used to coach Soren when he was in school. He would tell Soren that you need to not place first, like the first, you need to not be the first in your class. You need to actually be the third. You need to come in third in the sort of ranking system of your class, whatever. Which suggests that not only do you have to know more than the guy that knows the most, the first in the ranking, you need to know more than the second. You need to know so much that you know where to place yourself, which is pretty crazy. So Kierkegaard, pretty brilliant guy. He has a really interesting way of explaining the thing with Abraham and Isaac. It still doesn't make sense to me, but it makes sense in like a rational sense. I can kind of understand it in a way, but still not really. Which he says that Abraham is the knight of faith. Anyways, he says that there had to have been a teleological suspension of ethics. So ethics are universal moral law that God puts in, like don't murder. Also don't murder your son. And so for God to give the commandment would almost be breaking God's own rules. It would be commanding Abraham to sin, which is, you can't do that. God can't do that in theory, right? If we're looking at this in the same way, if you take a Platonic stance on this, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever in a rational sense, because I also read the Meno, or excuse me, not the Meno, dang it, what is this one? Oh, it starts with an E. What's his name? His name means, and within the Greek it means Mr. Right, basically. So this guy, he's right on. He knows his stuff. He knows everything about all there is to know, basically. He's Mr. Right. He's actually. And Socrates has been indicted by Meno, and he's going to the courts or whatever, and he meets this other guy, and I wish I could remember his name. I about want to go run inside and read it. I can't. Whenever I need to remember a name, I cannot remember the name. It is so frustrating. God, okay, hopefully it comes to me. But, so he's talking to this Mr. Right, and Mr. Right, Socrates asks, well, Mr. Right, what are you here for, Mr. Right says, well, I'm here because my father, one of his slaves, killed another slave, and my father went ahead and bound him up, tied him up, threw him in a ditch alive, but then he left and to go consult with the oracle at Delphi, because the oracle at Delphi can tell you what the right thing to do is. Because the oracle at Delphi is going to go talk to Apollo, and Apollo is going to talk to the oracle, and the oracle is going to tell you, they're a prophet, essentially. And so he goes off to the oracle at Delphi. Well, within the intermediate time or intervening time, the slave dies. The slave passes away because he's starving and in a ditch tied up. Okay, so this son, Mr. Right, is going to go ahead and indict his own father. Now, the penalty for this would be death, because he's accusing his father of murder. Now, this is symbolic because of when you read the Apology and the Phaedo, when you read all these Platonic dialogues that are discussing and the Crito, but specifically the Apology and the Phaedo, you learn that Socrates is the father of Athens, and he's trying to be a good father to Athens. And when he's convicted in the Apology, he says, did I say the Meno earlier? I meant the Apology, if I did say that. In the Apology, he says, if any of you catch my sons acting in the way that the Athenians have acted, I ask that you reprimand them, or something to that extent. What that means is that that the Athenian people are trying to kill their father, which is Socrates. So symbolically, that's what Mr. Right is doing to his dad. And he's trying to play it off as some pious act, which is exactly what Meno does with Socrates. He's saying this is impious because Socrates has doubted and is leading the youth away from the gods. Okay? He's a heretic. So this is a pious thing for him to do. Now they get on the topic of piety, to which Socrates is like, well, what is that piety thing, And Mr. Right is studied in theology. He's knows everything. He's gone and studied in the temples. He knows all about theology and knows all about piety, presumably. And Socrates asks Mr. Right. I keep trying to get to the name. I can't get to it. Mr. Right. He asked Mr. Right, what is piety? Now, when Socrates asks any kind of question like that, he's looking for the kind of certainty from an answer in the same way that you ask what's 2 + 2 equal. It equals 4. It equals 4 every time, regardless of circumstance. 2 + 2 equals 4. And he's looking for that type of answer. He's not looking for an example. He's looking for the deductive one and only answer to what is piety. And so Mr. Right says, well, you see, piety is when you do something and you do something that the gods really like. Because and you got to remember, the Greek pantheon, none of them are in agreement as to what they want. They all kind of disagree. So you can see how this is kind of confusing as to what piety is, because they don't have monotheism, which is kind of what Plato or Socrates, but Plato is trying to come to the conclusion of, that there is this one universal source, which would be the form of the good. That's God, right? So, and there's one and only answers to questions like beauty, what is beauty, what is justice, what is piety. All these things have answers, and these are forms, these are ideas that exist somewhere beyond our realm, in the realm of the forms. So there's a one and only answer to these questions. And Socrates thinks that, or Plato thinks, that we can get to these answers through the dialectic, through reason, through logical decoding of these things. And so when Mr. Right says, well, it's doing what the gods want. I forget what his specific answer was exactly. Socrates is going to go ahead and engage in the dialectic, and through this process, he's going to get to the question, do the gods like things and therefore they are pious or they are just? And he says this too. Doesn't piety go along with justice? Isn't it a part of justice? Piety must be a part of justice, right? So, he says, do the gods like things and therefore they are just, they are pious? Or are things pious and just and therefore the gods like them? In other words, is it a changeable thing that can be flippantly decided upon by the gods because the gods don't all agree? They're at war with one another. They're constantly having conflicting views on things and what they value. Think about Odysseus. Athena and Zeus, Zeus, his will is what's going to get done ultimately. But then you got Poseidon over here, which is the brother of Zeus, according to Homer. And he realizes that what Zeus is doing is ultimately going to get done, but he's going to throw in as many wrenches as he can to mess Odysseus up. So they're conflicting. They don't like this. Think about the Iliad. Athena is helping out Achilles to fight Hector and the Trojans, who are backed up by Ares and also Aphrodite. So, regardless of the point, you understand the point. The point is that the gods in the Greek world it's like dealing with somebody with BPD or somebody that's bipolar. I don't know if that's right. Someone with schizophrenia, something. They're very inconsistent is what I'm trying to tell you. And Socrates is what I believe Socrates would say, what he would certainly like to think, is that the gods like things, things are good, things are just, things are pious, and therefore the gods like them. In other words, they can't be changed. These are eternal things. And so I've asked this question to Christians multiple times, and they always give me the former, which is God likes things and therefore they are good and they are just, which has always raised an issue in my mind, and I don't know if I'll ever get to the bottom of it. But back to Kierkegaard, there's God's will, which is teleology, the end, the purpose, the end state, right, of whatever's going to happen. And through this, we can build a bridge over ethics somehow. I'm not sure how this works. I would have to view this sub specie eternitatis from the perspective of eternity, from God's point of view. I don't know what that looks like. That's where faith comes in. And that's why Abraham, Kierkegaard says that Abraham was tempted. What's he tempted by? He's tempted by the ethical thing, which would be not to kill his son, because he loves his son. He also brings up that the example of the rich young man in, I forget which book of the Bible, the rich young man comes to follow Jesus and says, look, I've followed the 10 Commandments, I've done all this nice stuff, I'm a good pious guy, just like Mr. Right. He's a good pious man. And Jesus says, oh really, okay, give up all your worldly possessions and follow me. To which he says, I gotta go get lunch, I'll see you later. But what Kierkegaard brings up is that if the rich young man, or if the rich young man didn't care about his worldly possessions, it wouldn't be a leap of faith to give them up. It wouldn't be much to disregard that, essentially. In the same case with Abraham and Isaac, if Abraham didn't love his son, if he didn't really care about killing him, then it wouldn't be much of a leap of faith regardless. Now, he makes a distinction, Kierkegaard does, about there's two ways of doing it, of going about it. If Abraham would have resigned it to, well, this is God's will, this is what must be done, I guess I just have to give up on Isaac. I have to resign myself. That's what he would call the night of resignation. But what Abraham does is he has faith. He's the knight of faith. He believes, he has faith that even if he does have to go through with this heinous act that he really doesn't want to do, that doesn't make any sense, not only will he have accomplished God's will, but somehow God is going to bring him back because God is going to fulfill his promise. He doesn't know how that's going to work. He has no idea. But he has faith that it will. And that's why he's the knight of faith. It's not only that he's resigned himself to this will, it's that he has hope, he has faith that he will somehow get it back with infinitude, as Kierkegaard would say. I may be misunderstanding this at this point. That's my understanding of it thus far. So I hope to one day become the knight of faith. I know it's not going to happen overnight. I don't know if, even Kierkegaard says, I'd really like to be the knight of faith. I just can't do it. I'm not to that point. I have hope that I can get to that, but I don't know if I will. The atheist crowd is going to be seething in the comments. Anyways, man. So that's what's been going through my brain the past couple of days. Holy smokes. Yeah. I did bring a couple books to talk about. Hagakure. I was thinking about where he says, simply become insane and desperate. That sounds like faith to me as well. The way of samurai is in desperateness. 10 men or more cannot kill such a man. Common sense will not accomplish great things. Simply become insane and desperate. In the way of the samurai, if one uses discrimination, he will fall behind. One needs neither loyalty nor devotion, but simply to become desperate in the way. Loyalty and devotion are of themselves within desperation. Desperation sounds like faith. Becoming insane and desperate. Sounds like the Kierkegaardian leap of faith a little bit. But I'm making connections here that maybe there is none, but this is what's spoken to me. The resolution of the man, the resolution of the men of former times was deep. Those between the ages of 13 and 60 went to the front lines. For this reason, men of advanced years hid their age. Imagine being 60 years old and you're like, I must do this, to the point where instead of like young men in World War II, when dudes were so fired up to go fight, and they're like 16, they're full of test, they're like ready for this adventure and war, that they would lie about their age to recruiters to get enlisted. This is the reverse of that, where an old guy with reduced test, but still probably like an order of magnitude higher than what we have today is going to sign up and pretend like he's way younger, shave his gray beard, and say, I'm like, like 40 something. Meanwhile, he's like 60, in his 60s. That's gumption. Wow. When delivering something like an important letter or other written materials, grasp it firmly in your hand as you go and do not release it once, but hand it over directly to the recipient. A retainer is a man who remains consistently undistracted 24 hours a day, whether he is in the presence of his master or in public. If one is careless during his rest period, the public will see him as being only careless. Pretty good. Devotion. Being single-minded, thinking only of your purpose, only of the master. When reading something aloud, it is best to read from the belly. How do you... Hold on. I'm going to try reading from the mouth real quick. When reading something aloud... When reading something aloud, it is best to read from the belly. Reading from one's mouth, one's voice will not endure. This is now Shikubu's teaching. Now I'm going to try reading from the belly. When reading something aloud. How do you read from the belly? Maybe I've been reading from the belly the whole time and I didn't even know. During happy times, pride and extravagance are dangerous. If one is not prudent in ordinary times, he will not be able to catch up. A person who advances during good times will falter during the bad. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty true. That's some of the reason why I typically when I get super happy and I know that I'm like elated and I'm taken over by this sort of spirit of complete joy, I know that it's not going to last, and I have to try to sober myself a little bit through various means, like walking in the rain while listening to the Guts theme, listening to depressing music, thinking about death. Although that doesn't really make me sad. Not because I'm like, can't wait till I die, but it's just never bothered me, honestly. Death? Maybe it will when I get a little older. We'll see. It hasn't really ever bothered me. I don't know. Do you guys ever just sit around and think about death? I'm sure plenty of you have sat around and thought about, one day I'm gonna die. Yeah, you will. Everybody's gonna. Hate to break it to you. It's never been a thing where it ruined my day. Where it's like, man, I'm gonna die one day. I'm really bummed out and depressed now. I mean, other people dying bums me out because I miss them. Death and dying. I think it's so removed and so far from me, even though I've had experiences where I could have died and it was like never really. It just makes me more thankful for life, honestly. But, wow, we've gone through quite a variety of topics, and we're already this 29 minutes has felt like a second. I know this video has probably been in one consistent eye roll for the vast majority of people that watch me. Don't care though. That's one thing that's in the Hagakure, actually. It says, every night when you go to bed, think about death. That'll put you to sleep. Every night I think about death before I go to bed. When I go to sleep, it's like, man, one day I'll be dead. No, maybe that means I'm not that deep, guys. I haven't had, somebody asked me, wow, I need to settle down. I haven't had, somebody asked me that if I ever had an existential crisis. Absolutely. Yes. Where it's like, what am I here for? What's my purpose? What am I doing? Is this all meaningless? Yeah, it seems like it, but it can't be. Even, it's just something that I think you gotta live through, thinking that your life is meaningless. You have to live through it to find out it's not. And probably a big symptom of thinking your life is meaningless is living a meaningless life, frankly. Does that sound circular? I don't think it is. I think there's plenty of ways to live that are perfectly meaningless. You sit around, you watch TV all the day, all the doodah day. You watch movies all day, just trying to feel something, trying to get that little spark to make you feel alive. And when you're not doing that, you're playing video games, maybe you're eating, you're jerking off. You have very little social connection. You have almost nothing in the way of real meaningful connections with your fellow man. Your life exists to get high and to feel nice things and to sort of drink that cup of that opium that Helen brings Menelaus and the boys, Telemachus and what's-his-face, in book 4 of the Odyssey. Boom, we're back to the Odyssey. Right back. That cup of forgetfulness. Same when we get to the lotus eaters. That's drugs. That's token up on the weed. All right, Kayla, I know you like token up on the weed. I think that you're a productive person, though. I'm not judging you for that. I'm just saying if it's a slippery slope. And in the same way where drinking alcohol is. You know, and I'm not judging. Half the videos I've made are me drinking alcohol. Okay, I don't think that there's anything wrong with this as long as when you're doing these things and they're impeding, you don't have an alcohol problem, you don't have a weed problem until it starts causing problems in your life. Okay, I'm not telling you to just like stop it, but at the same time, realize if you could be doing more. And I'm not directly talking to you, Kayla. I don't know what that looks like in your life. Okay, anybody who's listening to this, I'm talking to myself, honestly. If these things help you, I say do it. These things are here for us. I mean, unless you're doing something crazy. Unless you're doing something like heroin or coke or something like that, where you're on a bender constantly and all you look forward to is not looking back on anything. That's a dark place to be in, I think, where you're doing something to forget. Look, forgetting is easy enough for me. I understand that's not everybody's case. I'm blessed with forgetfulness. But living in the past, Everything's the past. I think, who was it that said this? I think Norm was talking about this. Norm MacDonald. He said that every moment that you're in slips immediately into the past. This video is 35 minutes long. What happened in the beginning of the video is now the past. What I just said is now the past. So if you dwell on the past constantly, you're either dwelling constantly on things that are in the past, or you're constantly dwelling on things in the future which are soon to be in the past. So try to be in the moment. Everybody says this, everybody knows it. Being in the present is very nice if you can achieve that. But it's also good if you forgive yourself. If, for the past. There's plenty of things that I'm guilty of, that are in the past, that I don't like to think about. But I have a rest and an easy assurance with these things. And that's on my own path. I'm able to do that now. And I understand if there's things in your life where you can't forgive yourself about things about yourself. There's a lot to say about that, and I'm not going to get too hard into that, but thinking about the past makes you depressed. Thinking about the future makes you anxious. Luckily, for me, I'm not too burdened by these things anymore. I haven't been for a while, actually. They always come back. But so do good times, so do good thoughts, as Elisha would say. And that's very true. So you have a hope and a faith that, and a knowing that the good times, good things, good people always come back, which they do. Now that will not just happen through no effort of your own, clearly. But if you're putting your best foot forward, if you're living according to virtue, and if you are doing everything that you can, if you've done everything that you can to rectify the mistakes that you have in the past that plague you, and the things that you can't get over, then this is where what Marcus Aurelius says is true, that you can only worry about the things that you can change, and you don't worry about the things that you can't. And I know just saying that and just thinking that is not enough to make it true for you, but through time, I believe that it will become true for you. It became true for me. Look, I'm not perfect. All these things, you will be burdened and plagued by your past, and plagued by your future, and uncertainty of like, what's this all about? What am I doing? Who am I? Am I going to be a loser? Am I going to end up being a loser? That's a thought that I had a lot as a young lad, and still today. But I have an assurance and I'm not worried about it. Because wherever I end up is where God wants me. That doesn't mean that I get to just hang back and not put in any effort and not do the right things. Like, I can just not pay the rent. I can just be a complete asshole to everybody I know and be a complete degenerate. Yeah, it'll end up perfectly fine. I'm not talking about that. You got to do the right things. Man, this is just going, I'm just going over and over things right now. And these are all things that you guys probably already know. But if anybody needed to hear that, I'm glad. That's it. Now, the caffeine has sufficiently entered my bloodstream. Now it's time to blast bicep curls. So, I hope everybody is, I hope everybody is having a good weekend. By the time you see this, it'll probably be Saturday. It's Friday right now. I hope you're having a good time. And I hope that, what else do I hope? I hope a lot of things. Anyways, goodbye.